Okay, now we're gonna do circles where you have to complete the square, which means that it's not in the right form where we started out. It's not in x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. It's not in this form. So we have to go through the process of getting it into this form. You guys did completing the square before when we had something like you would trap your x's, you would drop an x from each, you would divide the number by 2, then you would square the parentheses. When you squared it, you added a value to this side of the equation. You added 9 to the equation. So then you would subtract 9 from the outside. So your answer would be like this. Well, we're going to do kind of the same thing. But notice on this one we have an x and a y that are in parentheses being squared. So we're going to have to complete the square twice. So if I give you something like oops, this should be a y. You're going to have to go through the process of completing the square on the x's and then completing the square on the y's. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to totally ignore the y's and just complete the square on the x's. Trap them, drop an x from each one, and I'm just not going to write any of this, but it's all the same. Divide by 2, square it. When I've squared this, I've added a number to this side of the equation. I've added 2 squared, which is 4. So I'm going to add 4 to the other side of the equation. Now on the example I did up here, I subtracted it from the same side of the equation. Subtracting it from the same side of the equation is the same thing as adding it to the other side of the equation. So since we're trying to get the x and the y on the same side with the radius on the other side, when I do this, I want to add the 4 to the other side. I hope that makes sense. Now I'm going to go through the process of completing the square on the y. So I'm going to trap the y's. I'm going to drop a y from each one. I'm going to divide by 2. I'm going to square it. When I squared this, I added 9 to this side of the equation. So I'm going to add 9 to the other side as well. Now notice on my equation, I have this extra 4 right here, and we want it to be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. There's nothing on the outside of the parentheses, so I need to get rid of that 4. So I'm going to subtract 4 from each side. Four minus 4 is 0, so this is just going to equal 9. So I have a center at -2, -3, and I have a radius of 3. So when you're going through the process of completing the square, I know that that's really difficult. I got really lucky this time that my radius was a whole number. That won't usually happen on the problems that I make up because I just make them up as I go. I'll do another example of this, completing the square. I know it's really hard. You've got to get the practice in on it, and hopefully you remember doing it before because that'll help. So if I have something like I'm going to go through the process. I'm going to do the x's first, so I'm going to trap the x's. I'm going to drop an x from each. I'm going to divide by 2. I'm going to square it. When I squared this, I added 49 to this side, which is 7 squared. So I'm going to add 49 to the other side. Now I'm going to do my y's. I'm going to trap the y's. I'm going to drop a y from each one. I'm going to divide by 2. I'm going to square it. When I squared this, I added 16 to this side of the equation, which is 4 squared. So I'm going to add 16 to the other side. Now I don't want this plus 6 right here, so I'm going to subtract the 6. So So my center is going to be at -7, -4, and my radius is going to be the square root of 59. So that's my answer, and that's it, I'm done. Unless I had to graph it, then I would graph it out. For graphing, when you have something that's a square root, just give me the closest approximation that you can. So square root of 59 is 7 point something, so 7.8. If I was graphing it out, I would go 7.8 to the right, so right there, 7.8 to the left, right there, 7.8 up, and 7.8 down. I would just do the best that I could with a square root. And then we want to try to make it look like a circle, which of course I did a horrible job of. So that's what you're trying to do on these completing the squares. They're not too bad, but you know, a lot of people have difficulty with them. So when you have difficulty, let me know and I'll help you out.